Yeah, just think about dancing and volleyball. You have to send them to school too.
What's for dinner tonight? When your wife's gone, you're like,
Well,
then you gotta keep the kids surviving.
I had to do a bread bar like Brian used to do when I was gone. I come back and the only thing that I can see in the sink was a knife. He had got a bread bar, peanut butter, toast, I don't know. Hache.
We're still waiting for Mrs. Toast.
Just walk
All I
through.
need is one knife to feed the whole family.
Hmm. So when is your next chapter meeting?
Chapter meeting, and maybe it's tomorrow, Wednesday.
Would you have a chance to get a letter then?
I think so.
And then you can email it to me and then we'll attach and send that. Yeah, and people can send the application.
Oh, you should.
How are you, sir?
My bag.
This had better silence my phone.
I know.
We got a couple minutes before
Worst thing
Sam's
to
here.
do
When it
is
start ringing.
ring
I got a busy week. Holy smoke. I gotta go to SIP meeting tomorrow. I mean, go up tomorrow because it starts Thursday morning. And leave from there and go to St. George to Joint Highways.
Oh yeah.
Come back to Salt Lake from St. George. Because I got a call from the governor's
Hey
office.
Brian, how you doing? Can you hear us okay?
There is
Yeah.
the chief of staff for some of the senators from back east are coming to talk.
Well,
They wanted
no,
a
you're
couple
fine.
of
I'll get them on my
county commissioners to speak about
You're helping out.
what the impacts are of they pass legislation on the counties. So they asked me to come and they're having a fancy dinner and then I'll come home Sunday.
That sounds like fun.
Packed week.
Yeah,
Brian, how you doing today?
that's what I say. Really packed.
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you all?
Good, good. It'll be just a second.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing
You
me to
bet you.
come.
We're still waiting for
I was
Sam.
yesterday in Moab.
He was running late,
That's not fun.
or
Yeah.
Dr. Sam.
Yep.
Sam. So once he gets here, we'll be ready.
Okay.
I crawled under the caution tape.
Oh, yeah,
Into the
that's
hall.
right. Yeah.
After I climbed all the way up the stairs
know,
and ran into that, I said,
Get
I'm
up.
not
Yeah.
going back
No,
down, back
I
up.
wouldn't either.
I just
Good morning. Sam.
Yeah.
crawled
It
under.
was up for yesterday, and so
Was that for yesterday?
yeah, they're
People
well,
caught you
and
more
to
dark than
this
the
afternoon they'll be working in
Grab my phone.
up on the roof,
Oh,
trying to get that HVAC system for that quarter of the building, and so
okay.
they were jackhammering yesterday, and so
Did you have connection to Blondie?
I missed
sure there's someone.
How many meetings have you had on the
So
jail
where the
too?
lineman name came from?
the architect, just that first one,
Oh.
and there was more
So they
introduction,
probably
and so
connected somewhere.
you didn't miss anything on there.
Okay.
Is your county office building in Blanding? Is that where you all are?
Our offices are in Monticello.
Did you ever go to Relative Finders?
I could be on the Perkins side.
Oh, I see.
My grandmother is on the paternal side. It's
Parkinson?
Perkins.
Perkins.
That's probably why Dr. Sam is on en route 5 minutes late.
Who is he? He's coming. He'll be here in person.
He'll be here right here in a second. Yeah.
But also, was telling me you better get in there. They're starting.
No.
I said they won't start without me.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, are you the one that does the tax deduction, that does that?
To adjust them up and down.
Yeah, because I need to, we're paying lots of taxes because I didn't have enough
Same with me.
taken out, so who,
Crystal can do it and Peter can also. Yeah.
okay, I'll work with them.
Yeah. I go there first, she'll give you a W-4 and then down at the bottom you can add.
Brian, are you up in
additional
Salt
amount.
Lake in your new building or something?
My office is at the new prison,
Okay,
just west of the airport.
perfect.
I live in Sandy though, so it's about a 25-minute drive. It's not bad.
Okay.
And I need to apologize. I have another meeting I have to jump into by 9:30.
Okay.
For me, I really just want to present myself and as UDC as an advocate and sponsor for Dr. Sam and his program that he's running. You know, we've really been trying to solve the problem of how to bring more programs into our county jail partners, which has just been very difficult for us. Dr. Sam came along and pretty much presented himself as a great solution to our problem, which is we don't have resources everywhere. So I just want to make sure that anyone that Dr. Sam is attempting to work with, that we wholeheartedly, you know, vouch for him and the programs that he's trying to build for the county jails. It's not necessarily UDC that is building them with him, but we appreciate the work that he's doing and believe in what he's doing and believe in what he's capable of doing. So if I'm not able to say anything else today in the meeting, I just want that to be out there, that we're actually very grateful for the work that he's doing and trying to do with our county partners.
All right. He'll be here just a second.
Can you guys hear there? Can you hear?
Yeah, I could.
Okay.
Did you get your phone?
Mhm.
Aha.
After I crawled under it. I think they're working on the HVAC into the building.
Right.
I didn't even look. I crawled up, I mean, I've come up the stairs and I'm not going back down. Just some work on the roof. An old building. Hey, what do you guys know?
Still nothing yet, so we're in a holding pattern.
Yeah. Salt Lake tomorrow, St. George the next day, Salt Lake the next day.
Other than that, you've got a nice restful week.
Yeah, good thing I got a chauffeur. She doesn't waste any time either.
I know I'm not the focus of the meeting, but are there any questions that you all might have related specifically to the Department of Corrections?
Not yet. It'd be hard where
Okay.
it's this initial presentation is just about the program itself.
Okay.
So it'd be educating the commissioners on what the project and the program is in its entirety, and then going from there.
Okay.
Here he is. Perfect.
Oh man, look, Brody's
Oh, she's so
Brought his
cute.
helper.
helper.
It's a presentation tactic. You win them over by little girls that, with their dolls.
I've done it before and it worked.
Let us go ahead and get started here, and then we'll turn the time over to you, Sam.
All right, commissioners, welcome everyone to our work session meeting this morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order, work session meeting to order. We'll go ahead and run through roll call quickly. So we got Commissioner Adams here, Commissioner Stubbs is here, Commissioner Harvey's here. So we have a full quorum today. On our agenda, we've got 2 items. And for our first item, we have a presentation for a pilot project report by the San Juan County Jail, Dr. Sam.
All right.
Thank you, commissioners, for having me. I've been wanting to do this for almost 4 years. I moved to San Juan County summer, June of 2020. So this is my 4th year anniversary being here. And a lot has happened to us. I brought Ruth, she's our 1-year-old. We have another one. We have 2 COVID babies, we call them, since we've been here. And that's one of the best parts. The other one, the one I'm going to talk to you about today is like the 3rd child I've had in San Juan, and that is the work we've been doing. And it's called Prevention Science Programs, or PSP. So this is going to feel like quiz. I promise everybody will pass if you make any attempt to remember anything I say. So you don't have to feel uncomfortable about it, but it's an important conversation that we have to have with elected officials in every county in Utah, and that's part of the project. And we have 2 goals. And that one is to maximize your awareness. So what we're doing today should give you a basic knowledge of what Prevention Science Program, or PSP, is. Our second goal, which we may or may not achieve today, is to also raise your level of support. So if we achieve the first one, that is more than enough for a first introductory meeting. If you like what you hear today, you can invite me back, and then we talk about, now that you know what this program is, how you can use your awesome power as the head of county government to support it right here in San Juan County. I brought with me a special guest. He's on Zoom, and his name is Brian Favre. And he works for Utah Department of Corrections. So he's here representing UDC in this project. And he's double booked. And I begged him that if he could come, if it's okay with you, we could give him a few minutes at the beginning so that he can share his whatever he wants to share about this program. But as far as partnering with the state government has been absolutely the best thing that could happen to this project. So we've done it here in San Juan and around the state, and we have permission, partnering with UDC, to extend it to all 29 counties. And Brian is a big part of making that happen. So Brian, I don't know if is it okay, Mac, or does he need special authorization? I would just love for him to say a few words. That way he can leave whenever he needs to. Is that okay?
That's fine, commissioners. Right?
Is there?
Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Brian.
Please.
Thank you, Dr. Sam. It's good to see you, and thank you, commissioners, for allowing me to come. And I do apologize, I have to leave early. But as many of you may know, Utah Department of Corrections partners with 20 Utah County jails. We partner in a way where state inmates will reside in those county jails. UDC, pays for beds to reserve for those state inmates, and we love that partnership. It allows us to, keep the numbers down in our state facilities, and it just provides a great opportunity for partnership with our county jails. One of the problems, though, that state corrections runs into is trying to provide resources, specifically education and post-secondary education, especially to those offenders who are residing in those county jails. At our 2 state facilities in Salt Lake and Gunnison, we have great partnerships with Salt Lake Community College, with Davis Technical College, with Snow College, that allow us to provide post-secondary education. It's a lot harder at our county jail facilities. We have a partnership with Duchesne County Jail, and we partner with Uinta Basin Technical College, but it's a little tedious because Vernal's really far away. And so it's hard for us to really support that program. And so one of the things we're very excited about is working with Dr. Sam to to provide specifically more post-secondary education resources to our county jail partners. At the end of the day, you know, I'm just one person. Dr. Sam is just one person, but Dr. Sam has the energy, the time, the focus, the connections to be able to work more closely with our county partners to build these programs and provide resources, not just to UDC custody inmates in county jails, but to anyone residing in a county jail. So we're actually very excited about this. And as the education coordinator for UDC, I want to offer my full sponsorship and advocacy for the program that he's attempting to run. We're excited about the work that he's put into it so far, and know that his enthusiasm will result in wonderful things for whatever counties decide to partner with him.
Thank you so much, Brian.
Dr. Sam,
Yes, yes, sir.
I just have a comment to make to Brian.
Please.
Brian, this is Commissioner Adams.
Hello.
In my former life, I was a school teacher for 30 years, and I taught a kid by the name of Brian Red.
My director.
You might know him.
I do, yes.
He's from Monticello.
Oh, wow.
I did not know that.
Did you know
Yeah.
that, Brian?
He grew up here in Monticello and was pretty amazing kid back then. I coached him in football and basketball all through high school and taught him in school. And anyway, I just wanted you to know that pretty amazing things come out of San Juan County. So we're sure glad you guys are here.
I have no doubt about that. I appreciate you sharing that. If it's okay.
Do you know one other person that I might tell you from Monticello is a lady by the name of Tracy Tabbitt. She's with the AG's office with Children's Justice Center. She's the Children's Justice Center director. She also came from Monticello, and I taught her in school as well.
Wow.
Well, then my goal is to help you all and Dr. Sam bring and make even greater things come out of San Juan County. Because if we can do this, it will unlock some wonderful doors for individuals who are residing in a not so normal place in San Juan County, but still have the opportunity to do great things.
Thank you so much, Brian. I can't stop smiling because that was not planned. We had no idea. I was going to tell you all about Brian Red, Mr. Red. We will skip that part completely. So,
if it's okay, Dr. Sam, I'm going to jump out. I apologize.
Sure.
I do have another meeting, but
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I want to just make sure you all know I'm happy to answer any questions on behalf of UDC and work with. I'm going to continue to work with Dr. Sam after this meeting, obviously. So I'll be in the loop.
Okay. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so much, Brian.
Have a good day, everyone. Take care.
All right. Well, that went way better than I anticipated. So I just feel like we can end the workshop now. And so that is in a nutshell. I know most of you, but I'm going to share a little bit about me and how I came to do this work. So I was adopted by a couple from Orem, Utah, who were the first missionaries for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to serve in Black Africa. And I say Black Africa because the church has been in South Africa for a long time, but just not to the rest of Africa. And my father was one of the first. My father was a school teacher, Commissioner Adam. So he was considered one of the most educated people in my village. And what that meant is that he has a high school diploma. Yeah, so you can see what higher education means to a boy like me. So growing up, I wanted to be like my dad. I wanted to be a teacher. And I was hoping that he would pay the tuition for me to finish primary and secondary school so I can teach in primary school like him. And my dad always said, you do a lot better than me. You'll be a better teacher. And as a child, I didn't know what that meant because he was the smartest person in the village. So my village, I keep saying village, I grew up in a tribe called Igbo tribe in Nigeria. And So there are three major tribes in Nigeria. We have about 500 tribes, but when we say major, that means tribes that have more than 10 million people in them. So my tribe is one of the top three and obviously the best. And growing up, one of the things we don't have is access to higher education or really any kind of education. To go to school, you have to pay. And so I also grew up in poverty. My dad worked hard, but sometimes something that never happens in America is that sometimes the government would not pay them. So when they work, they don't know whether they're going to be paid or not. The governor can choose to say this month is bad, nobody's going to get paid. And so we grew up in poverty. And so I dreamt of being educated, and it just wasn't possible until the missionaries came. I was 14 years old. They were supposed to be preaching the gospel because my dad invited them, and he spent about 10 years hounding them down to come to Africa, and he kept getting the letter saying, black people are not allowed to lead the church, so we can't come to Africa. And eventually in the 80s, we got a letter saying, black people can now join the church and we're going to send missionaries. And so that's, as a boy, you can imagine what it was like seeing missionaries from Utah in my village asking about Mr. Arongwa. And I was the first person they met. So I took them to our home, and this is how my journey began. I think of that day as the day of my life. We celebrate birthday here. That was like another birthday for me because of what they whispered in my ear. They said, Samuel, we're here to preach the gospel. Well, they asked me why I wasn't in school. I told them I finished primary school. My dad doesn't have money to send me to secondary school, and my dream is to be a teacher. They looked at each other. They said, your dream will come true. We can't talk about it now, but after our mission, we hope to help you with your dream. And that was incredible. That's how my life changed. Make a long story short, they finished their mission, handed me off to the couple that replaced them, and that kept happening while they came home and did everything they could to make sure that I come over. It took another 10 years. I didn't come here until I was 25, which is about 25 years ago. So half of my life was spent in the tribe, just hungry and desperate for, because the missionaries helped me understand that I don't have to stop at secondary school. They told me about university and that I was smart enough, and that is a long story to tell you all what went through, but you can imagine over a period of 10 years, eventually they managed to, I call it smuggle me into United States. And it took another 10 years for me to get the right visa because I came as a visitor and I obviously wanted to stay. And anyway, so that's how I got here. About 20 years ago or so, I finally got pardoned by a judge because I was placed on deportation for overstaying my visa. Eventually, a judge pardoned me because I promised him that if he let me become an American citizen, that he would never regret it. And he asked me what that meant. And I said, I would become a doctor and I would do something that would help every American to say thank you. So I am here to pay a debt that you didn't know that I owe you as American, because when I came here, it took a lot of generous people who fought for me to be here. And they believed in my dream that I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to specialize and become the first African Black prevention scientist that I know to specialize in prevention science. So now that you know my story, because people always ask me, why are you willing to do this? I'm doing it in a way that is different from how my colleagues do it. For you to have a prevention scientist come and do a workshop for you, you usually pay hundreds of dollars. And that is responsible for why most county commissioners know very little or nothing about prevention science programs. And as a young student, PhD student, when I found out about that, I made a promise that if I get certified, I would help every county in America. I would love if they pay me. So if you decide to pay me for what I'm doing with you, I would not be offended. My wife will actually enjoy that. But I will not ask you to pay me, and money will not be a condition for me to share everything I know about how you can use your position as county commissioners to eliminate 3 problems: crime, disease, and poverty. I did not bring a note today because I wanted this to be a little bit informal. If you want me to do a formal presentation, I'll be happy to come back in 2 weeks and where you get to vote or make a commitment or not. But today I wanted an opportunity to just talk to you in the way that I would talk to my father or my mother or grandpa or grandma when I found out about what prevention science programs are. We call it PSP for short. But prevention science is the best solution to any social problem in America or in Nigeria or anywhere in the world. So if you're an elected official and you sometimes wonder, how can I use my position, or how can we work together as a board, commission board, to not only reduce, but to prevent crime, disease, and poverty in the county? There is absolutely no better solution for you to support other than prevention science programs. It's been available, it's a new field of science. New means it's only about 50 years old. Other fields of science have been around for centuries. So this is a new field of science. It started in medicine about 100 years ago. The field of health and medicine usually ran by tradition. So to become a medical doctor, you need to be an apprentice to another doctor. And after a while, they discovered what they call evidence-based medicine. That's another name for prevention science program. You can call it evidence-based program or EBP, same thing. So people in health know it as evidence-based program or practice. We just say EBP. And that is using science instead of tradition to solve social problems. So if you lived 200 years ago and you got hurt, a doctor would look at you. One doctor would say, we need to cut off that finger. Another one would say, no, we need to operate on it. Another one would say, no, I prefer to put some herbs on it. So there was no standard for how to treat a major cut on your finger. It depends on which doctor you went to. 100 years ago, they came up with, let's have a standard that is informed by science so that every doctor is trained the same way, certified the same way. And if they forget, they can just look in what they call medical journal. They look online and refresh their memory so that they are using the best possible solution instead of coming up with everybody's idea. So 50 years ago, my colleagues that started our field decided, why are we not behaving like doctors when it comes to crime and poverty? Why don't we have a standard and we examine it scientifically, and if it works, we write it down and disseminate it, and everybody can use it. And that was one of the best things that could happen to people like me who came from crime or poverty, is that your government can now, if they want, invest in a standard that not only helps a few lucky people, we can actually eradicate the problem in the same way that people in health are eradicating diseases. You notice when COVID happened, they weren't thinking about helping a few counties. It was all hands on deck. We need to eradicate COVID. That is a standard practice in medicine. And that's what we are now doing when it comes to crime or poverty. Unfortunately, people like me want to be paid. And that's a good thing. People need to be paid for their work. And so that gave the idea that the only way you can hire people like me is that you have to pay us up front. And that is a big lie. That is what I've come to tell you today. You can hire prevention scientists to come and help you. If you don't have money, you can just beg them. In the same way that we beg medical doctors. My first medical exam was when I was 20 years old in my tribe, and it was by American doctors who did not charge a dime because they knew we didn't have any money. And they came, they gave us a full exam. They stayed a week in my village helping us, and we were shocked that they said, we knew you didn't have any money. We came from United States on a medical mission to help you. So everyone with the title of doctor have the opportunity to do the same thing. They can work for money for most of the time, but if you know how to talk to them, they will help you whether or not you can pay. And that's what I've come to tell you, that the reason you haven't been investing in prevention science programs is not because you don't have money. It's because you didn't know that you can actually invite us. So hopefully after today, if you like what you hear, you have the opportunity to fully invest in what we are doing. And I will talk about what that invest means. It doesn't have to be money. Money is good, but there are other ways as a leader that you can bring this opportunity to your people without having to pay. And in my case, there's not a lot of us, but there are a few of us that only got here because of the generosity of the American government and people. And so it is not a sacrifice for us to work for free to help counties like San Juan County. And I wanted to be upfront about that, because if I was an elected official and somebody came to pitch an idea, first thing I'm going to think is, what will that cost me and can I afford it? The answer is yes, it would not cost you anything. I would love, again, if you pay us for what we're doing, but you don't have to, and it's not going to make a difference for me because you have the added benefit that I live here. I've lived here for 4 years now. I hope to live here for the rest of my life, if my wife would allow me. I travel a lot to as many counties as I can, but this is where I would like to call home. And so if you wanted a reason to freely reach out to me, it's because I am your neighbor. I'm not just somebody who is selling an idea to you. So having provided that context, I want to talk about the report in front of you. I was hoping that other people would join me today, but a couple of things has happened since we did this pilot. First of all, the leaders that I worked with are no longer in office. One of them is your former sheriff, Jason Torgerson. I met him about 4 years ago when I moved here and told him about this. And I said, I want us to do a secret pilot because I am a very cautious person. It comes with my training. Before we start spreading this broadly, can we do a secret pilot to test to see if it works? The scientific name for what we did is called Post-Secondary Correctional Education, PSCE. And it is one of a dozen prevention science programs that we use. So think of it as medicine for a specific sickness or disease. Just like in medicine, if I was a medical doctor and you came and you have a cut in your hand, I will diagnose it, figure out what the problem is, and then think of a prescription, a specific medicine that's been tested and proven to be the best solution for that cut. So that's the same thing we do in prevention science. In my collaboration with former Sheriff Torgerson, we were targeting crime. And it's a specific type of crime that we call recidivism. When people commit crime, as you know, in the criminal justice system, there are 3 levels or steps. You have law enforcement or police who make the arrest. You have the court system that does the trial to determine guilt. And if, depending on the crime, if it's serious, the judge can sentence the person to incarceration as punishment. Then they move to the last part of the justice system, which is prisons and jails. We normally call them in science correctional facilities, which simply is a place where the government is authorized to hold people. And so I noticed when I looked at the data in each county that we have a very high level of recidivism, what we call I'll just call it reoffending today. And the way the justice system should work to reduce crime is when a person is incarcerated, they are supposed to be treated to a number of programs in the same way that medical doctors would treat somebody with a disease. And the goal is that when they go home, that they never go back. But if you have a quack doctor and you go to a quack doctor who is not using evidence-based medicine, one of the things that would happen is that your sickness will keep coming back. And that's what's happening in the justice system. Here in San Juan County, you are using what we call tradition-based programs for people in prison. And that was the first thing that struck me. So when people go to prison, whether they are there for a year or 10 years, when they go home, within a few months or a few years, they go right back. And that is true for almost 90% of people who are incarcerated. So that 90% reoffending rate is our clearest evidence that whatever program that is being implemented in the prison or jail is, I'm going to be nice today, is a waste of time. We have more insulting words we use in science for that type of practice. I would not do that. But is this a waste of time? More than a waste of time, it is a waste of money. Our last estimate is that it costs about $30,000 to incarcerate someone in our prison or jail. So think about spending $30,000 a year, and the person spends a few years or however long, and they go home only to come back and you spend another, you keep doing it over a lifetime. 90% of them will be part of this, we call it cycle of recidivism, which simply means it doesn't work. Now, what I just said will offend some people who actually believe that locking a person up is enough to get them to stop breaking the law. Most people say that because they are not educated by people like me. They don't see what we call data. They don't see the lifetime data. if you visited the jail and you saw people there, you could assume that, oh, they are well behaved, they're here. When they go home, they will never come back. But if you're like me, you will follow that person over the rest of their life. And you notice that most of them do come back. We just don't see it. The sheriff is in a position to see it, and the people that work there. So I spoke to the sheriff, and he quickly agreed with me. He said, Dr. Sam, that's exactly what's happening. And I was shocked because most sheriffs would say, nah, what I'm doing is working. We have to spend a lot of time to convince them. But Sheriff Torgerson understood it. He said, yes, we have a high recidivism. Do you have a solution? And I said, we do. And I told him about PSCE, post-secondary correctional education. And the first thing he thought about is, how do we pay for that? And I told him what I just told you. Normally you do pay, but for someone like me, I would do it for free for you. So we did a project where we selected a few inmates and we offered a course. I taught the course. It was the same course that I was teaching for Utah State University. I forgot to tell you that the reason I moved here was to work for Utah State University as a prevention scientist at night, but as a professor, instructor in the classroom during the day. So I had two appointments. One was as an assistant professor teaching 4 classes, and the other one is working with what we call Utah State University Extension. And I know in your last meeting, you had a presentation from my former boss, Reagan. So I was working in Extension, and my job was to bring prevention science to all 29 counties in Utah. I left that job about 6 months ago. As of last year, summer, I stopped working for Utah State University. Now I work for Utah Technical University as a part-time professor, and I'm spending most of my time working on this project. So I started a nonprofit called Prevention Science, and we're using that platform to bring this training to every county in Utah. We're hoping, thanks to the governor's support and UDC, that those who agree to support this program, we can go out and help them to implement it. So I forgot to mention that. So I told Sheriff Torgerson, and he agreed, and we did a pilot. And that pilot was to test. Pilot is the way we test what we're doing, at least some parts of it, to see if it works. My understanding is that was the first time, either in history or maybe in the last 30 years, that they've had a university education here at your jail. And that was what we were testing. So I taught the same course that I was teaching across the state for Utah State University. I taught one for here at the Monticello jail with a handful of inmates who were qualified to enroll, and they completed the course. And I tested a lot of the things we normally do on campus. One of the special things we did, I wanted to tell you today, is that in that course, because they were incarcerated, I wanted to make sure that they take something they learned from that course that would hopefully help them in their journey to avoid going back to crime. So we added to the course a lab that we call Open Education Resources, or OER. Now let me take a minute and tell you about OER, because that is more than exciting. About 30 years ago, university professors started an OER program, and their goal was to work with their students to write a high-quality free textbook. I'm just going to call it textbook. We call it Open Education Resources, but it's just a fancy word for free textbook. And the idea was to eliminate the cost of textbook for students. So our vision is that if this pilot goes well, we want it to continue forever. And the textbook we used for that class, they could not afford it. So I wanted to teach them how to be certified to assist a professor, any professor in their life, who is working on a free textbook called OER, or Open Education Textbook. And so thanks to Sheriff and the jail commander, Young and Elizabeth, who was in charge of education, they really helped me to pull together, and USU helped donate laptops. And we taught these inmates how to be what we call a UTARA, how to be a university teaching and research assistant. It's just a fancy word for somebody who can be useful to a professor who is working on creating a textbook. I have spent the last 4 years writing a textbook, one of the most popular textbooks I use for my class, called Introduction to the American Criminal Justice. Introduction to the American Criminal Justice. So that is one of the projects that came out of that course that I'm proud of is that they were able to learn how to help me, and they did help me in developing that textbook, which is, we've published it. It's being tested by about a dozen professors. The full publication will come out in a few months this summer. And for the first time in the history of our field, any professor who is teaching Introduction to the American Criminal Justice can now use a free textbook. They don't have to require the students to go out and buy a textbook. And if that project continues, we would be launching a new edition of that textbook on the 1st of January every year. So it will always be what we call the highest quality textbook in addition to being free. So that is exciting. That's kind of a side note, but I thought you should know that. What came out of that project is that we now have a job for everybody that is incarcerated in Utah and hopefully across the country and all over the world. We can certify them to be a university teaching and research assistants within a few months. And when they get that certificate, we can easily convert them into government employees working for professors like me who are public servants who want to be part of this awesome project to eliminate the cost of textbook for students, especially low-income students who struggle to pay. But the professors, most of them, less than 1% of professors are involved in that project. And when I talk to them, the first thing they say is, Sam, where am I going to find hundreds of hours to do the basic research for the book? So they require expensive textbooks because they don't want to spend 100 to 1,000 hours doing the research. What we found in the course I taught in your jail is that students can do up to 90% of that research that we are worried about. If students can do 90% of the research, that means that we can convince probably 90% of professors in Utah and all over the country to write their own textbook, and they would have a way to make it what we call high quality. So it's actually better than the commercial version. So publishers would help me for sharing this knowledge with you, but that is the future. We think this is the future of post-secondary correctional education, that we would be able to teach those courses in prison. We would be able to teach them using professors, we're calling them volunteer professors or pro bono professors, who are willing to teach at least one class a year without getting paid. If we get that commitment from professors, we will eliminate the cost of educating people in our local jails and prisons for county government. So you never have to vote on how much you would use to support it. You can support it with what we call your time or your talent, but you don't have to actually use tax dollars. This is important to me because one of the problems that I set out to solve, we call it the $1 trillion problem, is why the richest, most powerful, and smartest country in the world is not supporting prevention science programs at the county level. What I've been hearing for the last 10 years I've been a professor is we cannot afford it. If you educate people and pay them premium, what we call premium education, it costs about $9,000 to $10,000. So if you're spending $30,000 incarcerating people, and you're going to incarcerate them throughout their life, but you can stop that cycle by spending $10,000 a year for a couple of years. This is where the quiz comes in. You will answer quiz at the end of the workshop. You tell me which one makes sense. Would you rather invest $10,000 to $20,000 up front, give them a premium education, the most expensive we have to offer, or would you rather be spending $30,000 over a lifetime? And I ask that question because what we've been doing in San Juan County does not make any sense. Even if you paid the premium price of $10,000 a year, it is still a whole lot cheaper than what we're doing. You're spending millions of dollars, literally, to incarcerate about 50 to 100 people in this county. When we can, for the same amount or way less, we can end the cycle and save money for not only the county government, but the state and federal government who is participating in paying that $30,000 a year. So rather than engage in an argument, which is what my colleagues would normally do, they would tell you, you need to pay the $10,000. And you would say, no, get off my property and I don't want to see you again. And then we keep doing, I thought, how do I address your concern? And when I say you, I don't know you, I'm talking about commissioners in general. We've talked to commissioners across the country. The number one concern is money. So you never have to worry about that. You now have thousands of people like me who are willing and able to do what I have done. They will come here, we solve the problem, and we will save you millions of dollars. Now, how do we get paid? If you choose, the agreement I'll be seeking with you is what we call social impact bond, the scientific name, but the name we use for elected officials is pay for success. So if you're spending $30,000 to incarcerate people and we can prevent you from spending that, that means that you have saved $30,000 for every person that doesn't come back. What you can do, and this is where this decision comes, we're not making that decision today. What you can think about is we will partner with this group of professors or universities, if they want, and invite them to come and solve this problem. And if they meet our expectation and we save, then we could say for every $2 we save, we will pay the university $1 so they can continue to fund this project. And the goal is that at some point, hopefully in a year or two, these professors will stop teaching for free because you have saved enough money that you can actually afford to pay them from the savings that they have created. So we call that pay for success, and that is something to think about. It's not a big concern for you because I would work for you till I die. And I have a couple of my children that have agreed to become prevention scientists, and they will agree to keep working for you. So you can actually keep those savings and use it for whatever, build more bridges or whatever you've been spending your money on, and have volunteers keep this project going. What we hope is that this will be the end of argument between Republicans and Democrats over how to fund prevention science programs. And in the process of that argument, we end up wasting more money and more lives. We want these programs to enjoy the full support of elected officials so that we can end the suffering. By not investing in these programs, what has been happening is that these individuals who go to prison and go back, they pass on that behavior to their children. So just to throw a number to you, I promise not to throw a lot of numbers today. For every person that is involved in this cycle, which is essentially 90% of people in prison, their children, the average inmate has about 4 children over their lifetime. Their children are 50% more likely to end up in prison. So they pass that on. We call it intergenerational crime. Another thing that happens to them is that they live a life of poverty. You all know that we don't guarantee them a job while they're incarcerated, and we definitely don't guarantee them a job when they get home. So not only are they involved in crime rate, they are also a big part of your poverty rate. And I don't need to tell you about poverty rate. San Juan County has been at the bottom. We have the highest poverty rate, and that has been the case. I told my team to trace the history, and I was shocked that not only are we the poorest county, we have been the poorest county for decades. And that should be unacceptable to anybody. I'm hoping it will be unacceptable to you as the head of government. That is enough for you to use your power to declare an emergency and invite Governor Cox and invite President Biden to use their emergency funding to fund prevention science projects that will get you from being the poorest to the wealthiest county. And that's what I've come to commit to you. People like me know exactly how to help you get there in 5 years. By January 2030, if you support this program, you would go from being the poorest county to the wealthiest county. The road to eliminate poverty happens to be the same process for eliminating crime, is the same program. And one of the dozen programs you need is post-secondary education. You can use it to eliminate crime. You can also use it to eliminate poverty. You can use it to eliminate disease. It's one of those things that we are really proud of because it's one program that solves multiple problems countywide. So you need a lot more professors than me. You need dozens. And thankfully, I have spoken to my colleagues around the country and around the world. It turns out that Utah has helped tens of thousands of people like me around the world. And the state of Utah, I told the governor this because I had the privilege of briefing him on this program a few months ago. And I said, Governor, if you pick up the phone and call your colleague in my home state, he will send you a dozen more professors like me for free, because Utah is one of the most Let me take that back. Utah is the most generous state in our union. There is no state more generous than Utah. Utah sends people like me all over the world to help. And so those individuals, as I talk to them, I ask them, if you get a phone call from a county commissioner or from the governor in Utah, will you come and help? And 9 out of 10 that I talked to said, absolutely, they would come and help. One of the most exciting things that's happened since this pilot, I should share, is that we now have the technology to do this using the internet. In fact, that was one of the things we tested in the pilot, is whether we could use internet. So the courses that I taught on Zoom. And I don't need to tell you what that means for us. Not only do we have internet, the person that invented the global internet happens to be an African. We don't normally claim him because he's from South Africa, but since he's now the wealthiest man in the world, we gladly acclaim him. His name is Elon Musk. So Elon has invented a model called Starlink. I'm not going to explain all of it to bore you, but I know Mac has Starlink, and so he can tell you all about it. But it's internet that comes from the sky, and it's high-speed internet, and it can reach any corner in the world. So we're hoping to partner with Elon, because we will shame him since he's from Africa, or guilt him into letting us have that for free, so we can power every prison and every prisoner, every incarcerated person, give them access to free internet if they agree to participate in post-secondary education. So not only can we educate this population through the web, we can also guarantee them a high-income work through the internet, so that they will not only be highly educated, we call it HE, higher education, they can also have high income work, or HIWO, HIWO is a scientific acronym. That is a simple idea. It is so simple, any commissioner can implement it if they want it. The idea is find professors that will volunteer to educate them, find those that would educate them using free textbooks and free internet, and then you guarantee them a job as a county and as a state and as a nation. When I spoke with Governor Cox and his wife, Abby, they were very enthusiastic about being able to solve this problem, especially the part about not only educating them, but having them work. We can have them work while they're being educated. Those individuals that graduated from my course can now become employees working on developing free textbooks or anything else we want them to do for that matter while they are still. So after the first course, we can certify them, and then they are able to help offset the cost of their own education by becoming what we call UTARAs, University Teaching and Research Assistant. So my model, which is, I took the model that already exists, and my team and I at USU decided to make it better, to solve what I call our political problem, which is not wanting to pay the premium price. We asked the research question, can we do this without having to use tax dollars, at least for the pilot? And the answer is yes. 6 professors in San Juan County that I spoke with during our pilot told me that they would gladly join me. So as you know, professors specialize in the subjects that they teach. I teach prevention science. I teach about half a dozen classes. I teach criminal justice, juvenile justice, prevention science. Now I forgot the other ones that I teach, but so I teach about 6. So in order to get a person to a certificate or degree, we would need about 5 to 10 professors, depending on how many courses that they're able to teach. And you have more than enough for San Juan. And these are professors that live here in your county, and they will do it as a volunteer during the pilot. So I wanted to tell you, I didn't know I could see the screen from here. I was trying to remember the pilot from memory. So
Trying to follow you.
the 5 questions for an elected official, I did 5 so that we can remember it with our 5 fingers, is we call it 5 W questions because they all start with W. The first one is what we call what. What is Prevention Science Program? Or if you want to be specific, you can focus on just one program, which is Post-Secondary Correctional Education. We can answer the question of what is PSCE, what is Post-Secondary Correctional Education? And one way you can answer it is that it is one of the best PSPs that help to reduce reoffending or recidivism. Then the second question, I'm trying to remember them in alphabetical order. The second one will be where. Where do you need post-secondary correctional education? You need them wherever you have incarcerated people. In this case, it would be at the jail or detention center, wherever you're holding people. The other place you need them is communities where you have individuals who are impacted by our justice system. So some people might not be incarcerated, but they have been incarcerated in the past. The effect of that incarceration is going to stay with them for life. So to break that negative effect, PSCE is like a medicine you need to give them. So it's not just for those on the inside, it's also for those on the outside who are being impacted by the justice system. Some people get impacted if they just get arrested. Even if we don't lock them up, they're impacted because of that arrest. Because America is one of the few countries that keep a record of our involvement with the justice system for life. And one of the ways that you break that negative effect is give them as much PSCE as possible, give them as much higher education as possible. When I say as much, just like medicine, there are doses. You can do a course, so we call it C3D4. So you can just do a course. I just taught one course in jail, so that would be a low dose. You can go from a course to a certificate, and for some people, you need to go to a degree, what we call a 2-year degree or associate degree, and then you have bachelor's, master's, and the highest dose we give is called a doctorate, where you essentially give them a PhD or equivalent. For some people, that's what it would take. Certainly for me and my wife, that's what it would take. My wife is a doctor just like me, but for most people, they don't need a PhD. One course is enough. So with science, what we measure is what is the dosage a person needs, and we'll talk about that if you're interested in the details. But we do an assessment what the individual needs. Some people need a class, some need a certificate, some need degrees, and then we make sure that we provide the proper dosage that will, and if it doesn't work, you keep going. And that is why you don't have anybody with a PhD in your jail today. And if you do have one, they would be out in a hurry. Education breaks the cycle of incarceration, and that's why we are crazy about it. So we've answered what, we've answered where. Let me answer the third one would be when. The when is whenever we identify the individuals. In prevention science, we try to identify early. So we can actually identify before a person is born their likelihood of being incarcerated and administer this to them. I don't want to scare you by saying that, but that's as far back as we can go. If I go to prison, my children are more likely to go to prison. So you don't need to wait for them to go to prison. You can just, as a county government, extend higher education to my children to prevent them from ever going to prison. So it acts not only reduce the effects of crime, it acts to prevent it before it happens. And that's why it's really important. So that's what, where, when. I want to talk about who. And I think I've mentioned it already. Who is those individuals that we profile based on what we call their risk factors. If a person came from poverty, they are at risk. You don't need any more verification. Everybody living in poverty is most likely going to end up in prison or in the justice system, so we need to administer it immediately and over a lifetime for them. If a person comes from a single-parent home, if a person comes from a contentious divorce, so we have about a dozen risk factors that will give us a hint that a person is at risk, and therefore we can we can consider them at risk. Under who, we also talk about not only who benefits from this intervention, but who is responsible for administering it. And that's why I'm here today. You are the chief elected officials for the county. It is absolutely your responsibility to administer these PSPs to your population. Without your help, very few of them would have access to it. With your help, we would reach the magic number of 100%. 100% of everybody who is at risk need to have access to this program, and they need to have that access over a lifetime. And I'm confident saying over a lifetime because normally you would worry about how in the world do we pay for it. Now that you don't have to pay, there is absolutely no reason to deny people access. You can administer this to everybody who maybe don't even need it. We have not found a negative side effect for administering free higher education in a county. So there's no reason to ration it the way we've been doing in the last 100 years. That practice needs to end with your government. You need to guarantee it to people and use your position to make sure that they have access to this for over a lifetime. That's how you go from being the poorest county to the wealthiest county, because investing in people's higher education allows them to immediately become what we call HIWOs, high income workers. And you can actually employ them to earn enough money to support themselves and their family. That is a simple solution to poverty. And that's what you have not been told for more than a century. And that's why I made this journey today, that nobody has to live in poverty. Just like we don't have to force people to go to college. People can choose to be poor, but nobody has to be in poverty because they can't afford a textbook or because there is no university to educate them. So we've talked about what, we've talked about who, we've talked about where and when. The last question is my favorite, and that is what we call why. Why would a county commissioner prioritize prevention science programs in their county? There are two reasons, maybe three if you include what I call sustainability. The two reasons I like to talk about, is easy to remember. They both start with E. We call it the EE benefits. The first one is effectiveness. As an elected official, your goal is to be in charge of the legislative and the executive power of the county to solve social problems. So you are responsible to make sure that the citizens are not suffering from what we call preventable crime, preventable disease, preventable poverty. Today, you know you have all the resources you have, so why would you do it? Because that is your job. If people are in a clear and present danger, you have the executive power to use your office to direct that the resources of the county should be used to eliminate that problem. So to be effective in doing that, there is no better solution than prevention science program. It is the most effective way to not only reduce but eliminate these problems. So that is the number one why. The second one is what I call efficiency. The benefit of efficiency is saving money, saving tax dollars. Many of you subscribe to what we sometimes refer to as fiscal responsibility in government. And I feel comfortable saying that because Utah is what we would call a Republican state, even though it's offensive to my friends that are Democrats. But we call that because majority of elected officials subscribe to that conservative principle. So not only are you effective in your job, you would be most efficient by using these programs. Because they work, you avoid wasting all that millions of dollars that we have traditionally been wasting in San Juan County. You can actually give that back to taxpayers, which is what I'm told by the governor that the elected officials like to do in Utah, is give tax break or tax cut. You can do that if you use a program that saves money for tax. So not only are you effective, you are going to be efficient with the resources you've been entrusted in. So for these two reasons, the third reason I like to add is sustainability. So if you really want to make an A in this workshop, you can think of ESE, easy, which is effective, it works, sustainable, it will work forever. It's not just something that will last until you are no longer in office. This is something, once you start, is your legacy. It would be here for commissioners forever. And that's something, a goal you would be proud of, I would imagine. The third one, of course, is efficiency. You can say, when I was county commissioner or county commission board, assuming there is consensus, you can say our board saved X amount of dollars for taxpayers. And I think as elected officials, this is what you dream about. I certainly, that would make my dream, because as a prevention scientist, I get to work with you to help as many people as possible before I die. So that's what I get from it, and hopefully this is worth it for you. So we've come to the top of the hour, the 2 hours that Mac told me. So this is all that I have. I'm sure I missed some things, but this is in a nutshell the 5 parts of this program, PSPs, that I wanted to cover. You can ask me, quiz me on any part of it that I can explain more. At the end of today, if you feel confident that you have a basic knowledge of what is prevention science program for San Juan County, when do we need it, where do we need it, who benefits from it, what we call stakeholders, who benefit from it, and whose job is it to grant them that benefit, and the last one, why do we need to support this, then that would be so I would pause, as I normally do when I do this, and turn the rest of the time to you and ask me anything, and whenever you get tired, you can shut this down. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Commissioner Adams.
Yes.
Okay, I like what you're telling us. I want to welcome your wife. She's online,
Oh.
keeping track of you and your daughter.
I wouldn't be here without her. You've heard about me. I was born and raised in a village in Africa. So when USU invited me for an interview, they wanted me to visit multiple campuses, and they told me that they would really like if I choose Blanding campus here in San Juan. They have asked other people apparently before me, and most of them did not choose to be here. But I was eager to be posted here in San Juan because San Juan and Blanding reminded me of the village where I grew up, except that there was water. I did ask them about water. They said, oh yeah, we have the best water. And I said, what about food? They said, oh, all you can eat. I asked about electricity and internet. They said, yeah, we've got those. And they showed me where we were going to live. I quickly signed up, and then it dawned on me. My wife, at that time, we were living in Houston, where my wife was born and raised. And she will probably kill me for telling you this. So she's a big city girl, and she does not do well in a place where there is no Walmart or Sam's Club. And so she didn't like it for all the reasons that I was in love, because I thought we will actually save just about every penny we make here because
No place to spend money.
yes. So I thought she was going to divorce me because I didn't tell her where we were living in Utah. I told her it was Utah, but I was doing consulting work for the church. So I come to Salt Lake every month. So she thought we were going to live in Salt Lake. And I lied, something you should never do in marriage. I just told her it's in Utah. And when we drove here over 3 days and we came here, she said, what are we doing here? I said, this is our new home. Anyways, she didn't leave me, and now she's actually happy here. And so she's a better professor than me. She was my tutor in college. That was why I married her. She was my tutor in the PhD program. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about her.
Well, we're glad she has decided to become a village girl.
Yes.
We have had a special program at our jail for a long time where we have incarcerated sex offenders. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we've had an educational component for those
Yes.
incarcerated people. And I think that's actually been through Utah State,
Yes.
or maybe even some other colleges have participated. So we have a pretty outstanding program in the state of Utah, and have been recognized by the legislature and the governor, and they've helped fund those programs for those people, and I believe that they would like us to expand a little more. There have been some other jails in other part of Utah that have expanded and accept sex offender
Yes.
prisoners. So is your program going to be an add-on to what is already here? Or it sounds to me like it's a completely different kind of program, not just for sex offenders, but for all the incarcerated people
Yes.
in jail here in San Juan.
Yes. So the number you're looking for, that is a very good program, Commissioner Adams. I get asked that a lot. So the number you're looking for is 100%. We have outstanding programs that help a few people. what we need to be doing as county commission board is think about how do we help everybody. So you are right. We have an outstanding program and some people are benefiting from it. But the number, why this is scary to me is that about 90% that will go back to the crime they're committing. So to answer your question, what we look at is outcome in prevention science. We're not too particular about program and activities. You can tell me what you're doing all year long. The most important question is what happens after that? What happens to these people? Do the sex offenders go home and commit another sex offense, or do they go home and decide, I'm never going to do this again? If that number is not 100%, then you're doing something wrong and you need to go back with a team, not just me, a dozen people like me, and say, gentlemen, ladies, scientists, I want 100%. So as a commission board, the number you need is 100%, and that's what you need to hold your, I don't want to feel like we're talking about your jail alone. We're talking about a system, the justice system, which includes law enforcement, certainly the sheriff and the police chiefs, and the court system, and they are not your county government. I think you're only over legislative and executive. As soon as I find out who is running the justice system, we need to give them the same briefing. All three branches, whoever is their chief, in this case the sheriff, the district judge, I would imagine, and your board, the legislative, need to hold your employees accountable and say, we want 100% reentry. When people leave this facility, we don't want any of them coming back. So I will agree with you. We're doing a great job. There is a saying, when you know better, you do better. Given your history, meaning you don't have a chief prevention scientist up till now, what you're doing is outstanding. It would be not outstanding if after today you go back to what you were doing, which is not producing 100% satisfaction. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, that helps. Also, that whole sex offender program is pretty much funded by the state.
Yes.
You know, those monies come to us
Yes.
because we have those kind of prisoners, and
Yes.
because we have the programs, because we have the counseling, because we have the
Yes.
educational component.
Yes, sir.
So it doesn't affect our county budget as much as those prisoners affect the statewide budget. And I think we have in place now a funding system through the state legislature that
Yes, you do.
will continue to
Yes.
fund X number of prisoners in our jail
Yes.
that are sex offenders. And I'm not sure how much expansion we're going to do as far as that program with the remodel of the jail, but
I think Mac knows better.
yeah, but that's been a pretty good thing for San Juan County because it creates employment opportunities.
It creates employment and revenue, and I'm glad you brought that up. I believe you're referring to a program, we fondly refer to it as IPP, Inmate Placement Program. Is that what a contract with the state? And that was why I brought Brian, so that you know this is not something we're doing on the side that will somehow impact your funding.
Right.
If anything, and let me put this as a guarantee, if you choose to be part of this, it will only grow your revenue, not the other way around. You will earn more money because I think your capacity now is 100 people at the jail. But if we do this correctly, you could expand that number because you could serve not only the 100, I think it's 50 to 100 because the number fluctuates, but you can serve thousands who are not incarcerated, but they are in the community. So yes, in terms of revenue, what you should expect is double or quadruple, not less.
Did the governor indicate his support for your program, even from a financial standpoint, where the legislature would either support the university
Yes,
with dollars or the county with dollars, or is he just happy to have you do it for free?
both. I told the governor what I shared with you, which is that initially I would not ask for money until we do a pilot. In your case, you now have a pilot. So, and I took it to the governor and I said, we've done a pilot in San Juan. I would like your help to. The help I asked him was not financial. As you know, he controls the executive branch. It wasn't by accident that you saw Brian, who is over the IPP program education, appear with me. And that happened because after I met the governor, I called Mr. Red and I said, I've spoken to your boss and his wife, which is even more impressive. And I said they both liked the idea. And I shared the picture I took with the governor. It was the governor's idea to have a photo. And that photo has saved me probably $10,000 because I just shared a picture when they don't believe me. And I said, the governor liked it. He asked me to work with you and see if you're interested. And 9 out of 10, when I talk to any member of his cabinet that I've spoken to, they usually say, Sam, when do we get started? And they give me access to their entire team. So that is more than if he had agreed to pay me, because for 3 years I was getting paid when I was teaching for USU, but I wasn't allowed to talk to governor or his wife or any top official without special permission from Logan. And that permission usually takes on average a couple of years to get permission. So we move quickly because when the governor says, I like this idea, talk to my team, that gives us access. Our problem has never been about money.
Yeah.
And I cannot be more clear about that. That is the first thing people think about, because people like me have lied to you for over a century that it's pay to play. You pay Dr. Sam, then he works for you. That is a lie from the devil. Most professors in Utah, most people that need to make this happen, they worship you. If you call them and plead for them they will do you a $10,000 favor without blinking. And nobody has talked about that. A lot of my colleagues hate me for bringing this to attention, but I got frustrated because we need to solve this problem. And the way you solve it is focus on what you have already. Let me tell you what you have. You have me and half a dozen other people like me living here. In addition to those people, you have dozens across the state of Utah who, when I talk to them about San Juan, they almost want to jump on a bus or start driving. They want to come and help. In addition to that, you have people like me across the nation and across the world. If you focus on that, that's $1 million worth that you have not been utilizing. I want to focus on that to do a pilot. Once we do the pilot, we will start saving money for the county, for the state, for the federal government. And that's the data we take to the governor and the president and say, we have saved you X millions of dollars. Would you please take some of that savings and put it in a fund for the universities to draw on so we don't have to work for free forever? It's a simple model, and it makes it easy for the governor because he's an elected official. If he stands with me and announces this, he may not get reelected. But if he says, oh, secretly Dr. Sam implemented this and he saves us money, I would become a hero to his voters. So that's why we prefer to do what we're doing is put me to work, I save you money, and then you can talk about what we achieved. Instead of talking about our pie in the sky, you can actually say, Sam came in here with this person and saved us this money, and we would really like to. So that's when I feel comfortable talking about money when it's in past tense. When we calculate, you change sheriff, so I wasn't able to get a calculation. How much did I save in those few years that I worked for you? I'm trying to meet with the new sheriff, see if he's willing to talk to the old sheriff. We like for them to tell us rather than me say it, because when they tell me the number, I will shout it from the rooftop. When I talk to other counties, I would say, this is how much I saved state of Utah and San Juan County. So I'm not worried about money. As you've seen, I grew up making $1 a day, and here I am. So money will never be a problem because I think I'm wealthy. My wife and I think we're wealthy, even though our house, our car, our children, we look average. But if you compare it to African village, we would be pretty wealthy. And that's what is in my brain as I talk about money.
Well, we love Utah State University as a commission and as a county. The second university we love is BYU.
Oh.
And then the third university we put up with is University of Utah, but they're way.
Will I get in trouble for laughing and agreeing with you?
And those other two, So.
I'm hoping this is not on TV somewhere. I'm really worried about getting canceled before I. But thank you for sharing that, because between you and I love those universities you've mentioned. Obviously, Utah State brought me here, and I didn't tell you that before I came here, BYU was a university that gave me admission without having a high school diploma. You had to have a high school diploma, and they gave me admission to come here. So if somebody gets mad at me, that's what I have to tell them, that they brought me here when nobody else would.
Not surprised. Not surprised at
So,
all. Harvey Mack.
Don't let anybody in.
He went to the University of Utah.
no way.
I went to
So you-
BYU.
Commissioner, you trying to get me in trouble? I was told not to talk about these things. Yes, ma'am.
A couple of things as you told your story, personal story, resonate a little bit with my story. I'm from Argentina.
Oh,
When I joined the church, it was through a set of circumstances. I went to live with a former missionary to Argentina. He was from
Oh.
the United States, from Utah.
so you.
He had been a missionary 20 years earlier in Argentina, and I lived with him for almost 5 years. Then his former companion, when it's time for them, my American family to return,
Mm-hmm.
he had a former companion in Orem, Utah, and so he invited me to come to live in the United States. So I resonate, and I was coming to go BYU. I said that BYU did not accept me, so I went to University of Utah.
Perfect.
I still cheer for both. But, and then I did work for USU in Blanding, used to be CU before. So I worked there for 22 years with USU. And so education is very important, not only for the opportunity I had to come and have education, but be able to educate many
Other
the San Juan County citizens. And one of the most fascinating thing for me is to, as I run into my former students, to realize now their children have a college education, even grandchildren on the process of going. So I know education pay.
Yes.
And when I was campaigning, I had a reporter that came and asked me what I was going to do, and I took him to USU. I wanted you to know that the quad was my idea, and
Wow.
and I designed it with Lego on my preschool. Also the daycare, I fundraised to be able to do the daycare, and I did early childhood program.
Oh,
So
my goodness.
education is very, very important. I know
I can't wait to tell my wife
this,
what you just shared, because our children, they
Go
go
to-
they
to
go
the-
there
well,
and we
I
eat at
go-
the quad.
I go sometimes and say hello to the little toys I bought. They have done a good job keeping it up.
Yes, yes.
And so, so coming from that, I appreciate your desire to do what
Thank you.
you did. I also grew up in a very big city.
And you
Buenos
came here.
Aires, you know. So my husband was a missionary in the area, and before he asked me to marry him, he brought me and showed me the possibilities where I was going to live. Well, he didn't say that. He just wanted to see me my
Yes.
reaction. And the problem, anyway. So it had become my home. I
Mm,
just grew to love the area, and so I'm here to to serve the people now. And so I appreciate. I love people with a vision and people with a dream.
thank
And I do
you so
believe
much.
that when we have those things do work out.
Yes.
And so what an opportunity for you to do this. And so did you live in Blanding then?
Yes, yes. we
Oh,
live in
so I live in
Blanding.
Blanding
Jamie's a
too.
big city boy too. He comes from Montezuma Creek.
Oh, come on.
Anyway, so
Someplace down.
it is a good place. Anyway, but so I just wish you the best.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I had participated with the education at the jail, And in fact, when I decided to do a service project and clean up all the records from the prison, the San Juan County, the education department had files and files came from the records of the prison, and I had the opportunity to go through those records, like 2 file cabinets, about 6,
Wow.
9 drawers, and read, because they were asked to write some things about themselves, and it was just it was a really nice, I call those sad glad moment, because it was sad but glad to see. And many times I wonder what was the life like for them after they left. But they had lots of high school diploma. Monticello, here in Monticello, the adult ed program we would go, and I remember going to the prison and hearing those doors shutting behind it, which I would get so anxious.
Yes,
And-
it's scary.
But they also had people that were there in prison be assistant to the program, and they were
Yes.
tutors, and it was an amazing thing. And then the college, as a professor, people used to say, well, there are best students that had 100% attendance, you know.
That was my experience.
Yeah,
I don't like to
anyway.
say it publicly, but they were some of my best students. And so a lot of people that would support what we're doing, they want to have that experience. They want to teach people who are hungry.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you being there. Here, let's get some. That's your mom. Yeah, so that is really important. You mentioned the part about the inmates helping with the program, and that is an untapped resource. Is that we always worry about the cost, but if you train them, they can really help us to reduce significantly the cost because they're benefiting from it. So, in fact, the state of Colorado, a project we're working on, we're calling it Incarcerated Professor. There's a handful of people in there who already have their college degree, and they're being trained to become professors. One of them got his master's degree and then became a professor to teach on the inside. So there are things we can do with the resources we have already while we wait for, of course, the governor and Congress and legislature to allocate money. We can use what I'm calling surplus resources that we have already to run a pilot. So thank you for sharing that. Yes, that was excellent. Okay.
Well, Dr. Sam, I just want to make you aware that we have a criminal justice committee. I think we're planning our next meeting in a few weeks, I think. But 2 major components that we've been discussing are the Children's Justice Center in Blanding, and also a receiving center for folks that are struggling with substance abuse.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so we like to continue that conversation. But I think in order for our county to be more efficient, we need to navigate the data that exists within our county. And they're
Absolutely.
in various pockets, and we're trying to figure out a solution to bringing all that data together and breaking down those walls that limit us from sharing that data. But I'm interested in the part where, in the proposal you presented, you're giving medicine to the patients in the hospital and you're giving them doses of medication. But I'm kind of curious about the folks that maybe headed to the hospital but are still out there
Mm-hmm.
that could use the medicine so they don't end up in the
Absolutely.
hospital. So maybe at another time we can focus on that, because I think that's where a lot of the interests lie with the tribes and with DCFS and juvenile justices. Let's try to intervene before they get to the hospital.
Absolutely.
It's give them medicine that works so they don't have to end up in the hospital in that sense.
I love that. I love that. That's the foundation of prevention science is
Yes.
finding those who are at risk. And as I mentioned, sometimes for some people, we go before they are born. If we already know the condition they're going to be born into, we make sure we put guarantees in place
Exactly.
instead of letting them come and it's just.
It would be interesting to see the kind of criminal offenses we have in our county and to be able to talk about those a little more in depth.
Yes, sir.
But thank you.
Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias.
De nada, senor.
I'll just make one more comment about the receiving center.
Mm-hmm.
Davis County has one. I don't know if you have ever visited
Yes,
them.
I visited them
They have a
few months ago.
and I'm sure they probably do kind of similar things that you're thinking
Yes.
about doing. It's just
Yep.
and so anyway, thank
Yep.
you.
I'm glad you mentioned that. They are ahead compared to most counties, and yes, we visited with them, and yeah, we're hoping to help people no matter where they are. Obviously, for us, we have a lot of foundational work, and that's great. Others have already started, and we just help them to get to the 100% number that I talked about. So yeah, the decision for you is to consider how you feel about this. The step to move forward is my agreement or partnership with the state is any county that wants to be part of it so that we get a sense of who would be, in your case, we've done a mini pilot, I call it, because it was just one class, and we have the opportunity to expand that, but also to work with your, I believe it's called the County Coordinating Council, Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. You could bring me in as a consultant so that we can, from the foundation, make a really great effort to help as many people. And I hope we become a model, even though we're doing this statewide. I hope that our best work will be here in San Juan. So feel free to, I hope to be back in 2 weeks. If I don't know what the process is, I'll get with Mark to see if there are actions that you're willing to take so that we can move forward. I like for San Juan to continue the pilot we started. I like to work with the council, your criminal justice council, to recommend things that you can do, that you already have the resources. One of them is data. We need to bring a lot of scientists here to help us go from mystery to knowing exactly what is happening, and that's an area that desperately need work. So, well, commissioners, thank you for having me, and I will see you soon.
So what is your little girl's name?
Ruth Arungwa. Speaking of, she's ready to go. Her name is Ruth. Her Igbo name is Chidemma. So she's Ruth Chidemma Arungwa. We call her Ruth.
I have what I call a little Gigi, little great granddaughter, and her name is Ruth, and she's about 10 months.
10 months. Oh, she's 1 year old, and we want her to stop walking.
Okay. All right, then. I think we're done with our presentation. So,
All right.
moving on to our next item, Mac.
Nobody showed up yet outside.
Oh,
Today we were supposed to, at any time, have the 4th grade field trip. Typically every year they make a pass through our
Oh,
building.
the first graders?
Is it the 1st or 4th?
Okay.
One of them are supposed to, I think they'll be here today. And so I was hoping they'd come through by now, but I haven't seen them walk through the halls yet. So just be prepared if they come. We'll slow the process down for them to come in. Let me pop up.
So this is a closed meeting?
This is a closed meeting?
No.
No, okay.
No, this is open.
I thought everybody leaving, so
That's just that. When you get to administrative items, they're just like, no big deal. This is just Mac talking stuff. So we looked at the last time I'd mentioned just looking into the tier 2 changes that are coming about for 2025 and just putting some numbers together just to see how much it's going to cost the county. The one that we're looking at right now is with our public safety employees and with some of the 2024, 2025 changes that are coming in. You can kind of see the adjustments that the employer has to contribute towards the tier 1 and tier 2, and then those associated costs with it. So right now, with our tier 2 public safety employees, there's the question out there right now is, do counties pick up the additional, and we'll learn more about this in UAC. UAC seems like the League of Cities and Towns are a little bit more aggressive in educating their cities on what this is going to affect, and the counties haven't gotten there yet, but we've been on some communication feeds with cities and counties in general on the HR standpoint, and then I've seen some of that traffic going through where the question has been asked is, well, are counties going to pick up, or can they opt in to pick up the additional tier 2 increases? So for the tier 2, right now, the employee is supposed to contribute 2.59%. This is a hybrid non-contributory portion, so it doesn't affect, I think all of us in here are tier 1. So there's no changes to tier 1. It's the changes that are going to take place are to tier 2 hybrid non-contributory employees. It's a lot, and it's kind of hard to try to figure out. But right now we've elected to cover the 2.59. Now the employer, we automatically have to contribute the 25.83. That's our contribution automatically. We elected to also pay for the employees 2.59% share. Well, in 2025, this is now going up, 2024 through 2025, this is now going up to 4.73%. So the question is well, now, do counties and cities start covering this for their employees as well? The difficulty in the theory of this is when the state legislature made the changes, it wasn't intended for counties and cities to continue to pick this up. It was the employees that are supposed to be picking this up. And if we pick it up, we've got to pick it up as not as a wage increase that then puts more into URS withholdings. It was supposed to be used as kind of a tool to help provide immediate funds for the baby boomers that are now retiring out of the system. So there's a little bit more liquidity in the URS program. And so the intentions wasn't for cities and counties to pick this up. It was the employees, and it's the employees that have the option whether or not they elect to go non-contributory and opt into this extra mechanism where you can either participate a portion of your retirement funds to the fund itself, or you can put them in 401k. So here, last year, we elected to do the 2.59 for public safety employees. Now it's going up to 4.73. So the question is well, does the county now cover that cost as well? So some counties are like, we're done. If the employees want to contribute on their own out of their paycheck, they can opt into that, or they just take the regular tier 2 contribution side of it and there's not affected. If they choose to go this other investment route, then counties and cities, do you want to participate? Some counties and cities are like, yeah, no, we kind of see the writing on the wall. State legislators and URS are going to continue to increase this every year, and it where there's no end in sight for them. So there's some people that are reaching out and just screaming discontent with the new changes that URS has made through the state legislators. For us, that would cost us, if you look at on here, the coverage for the the 2.59%. Not everybody elects to opt into this. So we're at 23,000 right now. If we picked up the coverage for the 4.73%, so the additional would be at 43,592 a year is what the county would be paying for that. And so we're still trying to get our heads wrapped around this, because there is an election piece where they can go and pull a 401k, which isn't included in that number, where the 401k, if they opt to go 401k, the county's been matching their 401k contribution on tier 2 as well. There's another one that they've thrown in the mix where the employees can now, if you're a public employee, the amount that the county has had to contribute is less by 0.70%, and the employee is supposed to be picking up that change, that 0.70 in there. And I've scheduled a meeting for the 24th of April, I believe, where URS will come down and teach us a little bit more on the employee side of it to see what that affects. That 0.70 is an optional contribution that the employee can take. Some cities and counties are like, well, if we're taking the public safety and paying that contribution, we should also pay the 0.70 for the employees as well. But then when you read the language of it, the intent of this change was, again, not that the cities and counties pay this extra benefit and this extra contribution amount. It's like counties and cities keep with your contribution amount, but the employees are supposed to be contributing to this. Some cities and counties we don't care if we're doing it for public safety. We should also do it for the public employees as well. So we're going to cover the 0.70, but some I've seen on where this is so new and we're all trying to figure this out at the same time. Some cities and counties have mentioned, well, we'll just give them an increase in pay, but then the language in there is like, well, don't increase their pay, because if you increase their pay, you have now increased their URS contribution that the county now has to make, or the city now has to make. So you're defeating the purpose of what this contribution is supposed to be for, which is kind of that liquidity right now to cover those that are cashing out. And that's in the heart of hearts for me, is if you think of those that are retiring right now, that baby boomer age or a little bit younger, they would be tier 1. Tier 1 has the awesome option, separate from tier 2, is where we only have to work 30 years in the retirement system and we can retire at tier 1. Plus we can also take a cash out instead of extending your retirement further. Tier 2 doesn't have that option. And so with the tier 1s retiring, cashing out, that's where they need the liquidity. That's where they need the money. So these contributions will help kind of fund these individuals that are retiring right now.
It was 25, not 30.
Public safety started just tier 1 in general. So public safety, yeah, theirs is a 25-year. But you're getting these retirees right now that are cashing out, taking that lump sum right there initially, and that's where they need the money. That's the liquidity that they're missing. And so this was kind of a stopgap. And that's where some of these counties are like, hey, we can kind of see the writing on the wall. Similar to Social Security, they need a bailout, so this is only going to continue to increase. And so why should the counties and cities be placed with this burden? It should really be the state that pays for this. And so there's some kind of kickback going back and forth on how this should roll, but we do have to make a decision before July of whether or not we're picking up that extra
Are
contribution.
we planning to have some meetings with people that's affected so they understand, understand where it's coming
That's
from?
what
and-
URS does that, yes.
Oh.
Yep.
URS is coming down
And
to
that's
do
the
that.
Oh, good.
22nd and 23rd, one of those dates. And so
Good.
when we were at the UAC building Utah meeting, URS was there, and I asked him, like, hey, are you guys running out of money? What's going on? And so we had a conversation. He's like, oh, I can come to your county specifically.
Because I think it helps when the people understand where things coming from.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I remember when I was working for the adult ed program, and every community had a teacher, and we always kind of fighting for the money. And Wisconsin, the person that did the big tractor museum, what was his name? He was the one.
Westcott?
He was a boss. The beginning day, he got on the board and he showed us the money. He showed us the money, where it went, and we never fought over it because we knew how poor we were. We knew where the money was, and it kept saying, "Well, Monticello's getting more, Brandon's getting more, this one getting more, and how can we?" Seeing it, it helped. Somehow it helped
Especially for the employees.
the wondering,
side of it.
wondering why.
Yep.
And wonder, and it's glad they have somebody to explain. It'd be nice for people to be alert that this is going to be happening, because we don't have many people that come to our meetings to be informed. I was asking Bosa this morning how many people we have on Facebook, and she said we don't have that many. And so, for some reason, we need to figure out how we can get the people interested in what's going on, so they can see why we make
Raise
decisions.
taxes, they'll be here. They came that last time we were trying to raise. Whole room was packed.
Room
Had people
full.
out in the hall. Yeah.
We need to have
Yeah.
an attraction, something that attracts them. But
Yeah.
anyway, but that's good to know that they'll come and explain. So
We will. So we'll have them come in, but we do need to just put it back on your radar. As we do need to decide whether or not we're going to continue that full coverage for the employees themselves, or just continue to cover what the county is supposed to cover, without the addition to it. And so, like I said, some are looking at giving a pay increase to cover this. URS is saying don't give a pay increase, because all that does is it puts the bigger burden back on the employer, because you still have to cover that percentage. So if you increase your pay to cover this over here, then now you've got to cover it more on the employer contribution side of it. So I don't do that. So some are thinking of a stipend where they'll just kind of give a bonus to it. But for me, you do that, then you're taxed for it as well at a heavier percentage. And so we're trying to figure out what it does. So I had Peter work on this spreadsheet this week. He unfortunately is out with COVID for a couple. And so, yeah, so we'll continue to refine our numbers and get to finalizing this cost. Is it $43,000 a year? I worry about those cities and counties that are going through and giving the pay increases for the tier 2s to cover their contribution amount, because then that leaves tier 1s screaming that, well, you're paying over here, but you're not paying us over on the tier 1 side of it. And so that's where some counties are like, we're not doing anything. If the employee elects to go to the tier 2 non-contributory and in those investment funds, if they choose to do that, they do so on their own. We'll continue to cover what the employee is required to cover, and nothing else. And so there's that mindset out there with a lot of cities and counties as well. And so it's pretty interesting, pretty crazy. And so just know that we'll finalize these numbers, but we will have to make that decision here before July. And then another one, just to put on your radar, I continue to discuss just the ambulance situation. Had a discussion with staff at Monticello City and what to do, and so the city manager is going to take that back to the mayor and several of the city council members. The city council members had asked, what was going on with the ambulance, what does this new law affect us? So they're hearing about it as well, and so he was going to have some discussions with them in Monticello City, and then Bluff is also, they're already aware of, you know, that question of whether or not they take on ambulance or pay the county to provide that service for them. Blanding is my last that I've got to talk to, and so I'll schedule a meeting with Trent and just have that discussion with him and try to figure out. In the meantime, as we attended that ambulance meeting, the EMS meeting with Darren Bushman, he's like, Mac, are you guys participating in the tax of the OHV rentals? I've looked at that to see if we're participating in that tax, and the county's not. So what this is some counties have elected to participate in it, where if somebody comes to San Juan County and rents an off-road vehicle, that is taxed. And if you elect as a county to participate or portion in that tax, then we will receive revenue from that tax that can then go back in. It's for transportation. It can also be used for ambulance as well. And so I looked up last night on our tax rolls to see if we're participating in that, and we're not. And so because of that, I'd like to explore that if that's something you guys are willing to look at. I don't think it'll be a big revenue generator. We don't have a lot of OHV rental places here in San Juan County, but it's these Jeep Jamborees and things like these events that come, and as they sell and they rent their vehicles on this side of the fence, then we would be making I think it's 0.25% of a sales tax on that. So it's only a quarter of a percent, yet it's still something that we can then use to offset some of the costs out of general fund and the sales tax there. There's also another sales tax that we've got to look into where it's another transportation tax that you see that, like Grand County is participated in it, Garfield County is participating in it, where you can take up to 1% sales tax. And the hard part so the OHV for me is easy because it's more of a tax on tourists that come here. The other one that Grand County and Garfield County participate in is a percentage of the sales tax that can go to ambulance as well, but it's a grocery tax. And so that one kind of hurts your citizens more. Well, not more, it does, because that's where it's generating. It's off of your grocery sales tax. And that would be up to, I think it's up to 1% that you can take, but only half of it can go to your ambulance. And so when you look at Garfield County and Grand County, they've only elected to take half of that percent of the tax, which they can use towards ambulance. And so that's how, when you look at Grand County's system, that's their big one that they collect and are able to keep that sustainable. There in Grand County. Garfield County, I don't know how sustainable theirs is, but there's that tax as well that we can look at. So one of the things that I'd like to do is just kind of explore those two options and just put some numbers behind it to see what we think it would generate if we go that route. I'll work with the tax commission and just see if those amounts can help. And so once we get out of these grant funds, we're going to be hurting and can't continue to go this route. And so that's why we're looking at the same time talking with the cities, letting them know that the 911 response is theirs. They can contract with the county, but if they want to contract, here's some amounts that we can look at, or here's our deficit, and pro rata share the deficit out, to the cities. And so a couple of interesting discussions that are going to be coming. I just wanted to at least put it on your radar if you want me to look into those and come back with a little bit more better, just estimated numbers of what that would generate. It won't be much. We're not a high sales tax county, and so because of that, it's going to be, instead of millions of dollars, you'll be at thousands.
But the state law says that cities are responsible for their own ambulance service.
Correct. Yep.
So what we would be doing with the cities is contracting with them to provide ambulance service for X number of dollars.
Correct.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a choice. I think
They don't have that
if they
choice,
don't,
no.
they don't want to contract with the county, then
They get it.
it's
It's
theirs.
their responsibility. The hard part with that is, you know, a lot of the calls are outside of the city. So you take here in Monticello, there's not a lot of ambulance calls here in Monticello City,
This and
but there is
and the
on
highway.
and so it would still be the county's responsibility to cover those. And so I think with those conversations, we can look to see how best to do that. One of the thoughts is, well, we have these ambulances and we can gift them to the cities and then gift them at $200,000 per ambulance, and by the cities responding outside of town, we reduce that amount that they've owed us throughout time. But there will be a point in time where we will have to pay the cities for non-annexed area ambulance calls,
Then we'll contract with them.
and then we'll contract with them. And so it's a mess. We're all in the same mess. And so that was my discussion with Monticello City, was just that. It's like, let's sit down to the table together and try to figure out how to do this. But ultimately, for your annexed area, you're it. And here's my deficit, and what you don't want to have place. And it was interesting looking at some of the city's taxes. We're about a 6.35% sales tax ratio. That's how much we tax here. Your cities are higher than we are on charging sales tax. One of the cities or town is up into the sevens because of their tax system. And so it's like, let's sit down and kind of discuss how we can work this so that it's a win-win.
Well, one of the things that hurts us is the monuments. We have more visitors coming
Oh,
and
absolutely, yeah.
more use of our services,
Yep.
and they're just
Yeah, yeah, and
Don't-
they get TRT and can use TRT to mitigate EMS service as well. And so it's
But
just
I
a
think lots
bigger
of the-
discussion that we have to have.
lots of the visitors we get. They don't spend much money in town. They just bring the stuff from home and they just go, and so we have to figure out ways how we can
Get them to stop.
generate funds on those. But
Yeah. Throw
So-
a bunch of nails out in the road so they can pop the tires or something. Yeah. Something to get them stop and spend $1. And a lot of that is restaurants and working with our restaurants. If our restaurants are constantly closed during the day during tourist season, then it's trying to find that sustainability for our restaurant owners so that they can stay open. And
I was blending in the restaurant, the steakhouse on Friday, and they had a waiting line of 40 people.
okay,
Peop-
perfect.
People, yeah, perfect. But it took us about probably 30 minutes for us to get served. And while I was in the line, I was busy with different people. And another couple that was from Oregon, after 35 minutes, they were leaving. So I ran to one of the waiters. I said they left because they were not service. So I went and asked them if they would come back, that somebody would help them. And so they came back. But the sad thing is, it's not like, okay, I'll just go down the street. There's no going down the street
No,
to
it's
for
just
another
that
place to
one.
eat.
Mhm.
And so, but they were all so excited to be in the area. They were going, they were going to some kind of they were going to Shiprock. They were coming from Canada. They were invited to some kind of the word doesn't want to come back. Anyway, to a celebration there. And so everybody was started to be there. And they're just basic people that retire. I think they're just traveling in groups, and the food is really good. It's just they were caught by surprise to have so many people there. And
it's hard to hire staff, you know, and that's another one that our
And so
restaurants have a hard time with. Are you ready to about ready? Lyman's over there twitching. It's almost 11.
I'm gonna stop
So-
this one.
We can